Time, mid-November 1940. Place, the highways of America, already swarming with some 30 million passenger cars. Cars to fit every pocketbook and every taste. Yet with 20-odd makes already on the road, a car built around a new idea appeared in those November days of 1940. The new kind of car, the Nash Ambassador 600. It was a car built for modern needs, a car specifically designed for longer life and lower operating costs. That it filled modern needs was soon proved by the orders which wrote one of the greatest success stories of modern automotive history. 1941 sales of the Ambassador 600 came to more than 50,000 units, a spectacular record for any brand new make-up car. Now, for 1942, there is being written the second chapter in the history of this new kind of car. It's a chapter which begins with a complete restyling of the new Model 600.
There's a massive new front end that gives a higher priced look to this million-dollar beauty, a low-priced car that's distinctive, and distinctively a Nash. Note the modern design in the rounded radiator, the streamlined sweep of the longer hood, the overall appearance of sturdiness, completely in tune with the times. There's a massive new bumper with 4 rugged guards, smartly designed to harmonize perfectly with everything above it, and sized to give the whole car a low, hugging the road look. Now on around to the side. The flash of chrome window reveals, the length-emphasizing sweep of the chrome belt molding, graceful streamlined door handles, almost a part of the molding itself, and smart multiple fender bars, also of gleaming chrome. Now here's the rear end design to match that massive, sleek new front. Notice that the rear end is massive too, and provides the Nash with that same racy, low-hung look when seen from behind. Yes, coming or going, this big Nash, 196 1/2 inches from bumper to bumper, is an inspiring beauty. You can buy either a trunk sedan like this, or you may prefer the sleek, unbroken curve of the slipstream model. And the beauty of either model is lasting, for every inch of body surface is bonderized to prevent the spread of rust, and then finished in long-lived Permalux baked enamel, not lacquer. Inside the Ambassador 600, eye appeal is blended perfectly with usefulness and convenience. Just look at that new deluxe instrument panel. Brilliant engine-turned steel, gleaming with horizontal bands of chromium, glowing with rich-colored plastics. And its big airplane-style instruments are as easy to read as they are to look at. The new deluxe steering wheel is scientifically tested and designed for your comfort. You grip it naturally. You hold it easily. You can see the instruments at all times. Nash 600 upholstery, durable and luxurious. You have your choice of 5 beautiful fabrics, some of them at slight extra charge.
Yes, in 1942, as always, the car buyer demands that his car have welcome, lasting beauty. He'll get it in the Nash Ambassador 600. The buy, that's a beauty. But this year, as never before, smart buyers are looking beyond beauty, seeking long-term value, seeking a car built for the times. And that means a car that costs less to run. All America knows that gasoline prices have gone up. We already have gasless Sundays. And if actual rationing of gasoline comes to your part of the country, today's automobile buyers will either be driving an economical car or sitting at home hoping for a chance to refill an empty gas tank.
One car out of all those offered in 1942 is built around a new idea, still brand new because there has been no similar development by any other manufacturer. And because the Ambassador 600 is the most modern car on the market, it embodies new thinking and new engineering which have achieved operating economy never before attained in a full-size car. Now, conventional cars are heavier than the 600. They have taken on weight as the years went by. As their manufacturers lengthened wheelbase to get an easier ride and more room for passengers, they had to heavy up the frame to hold the longer car together. Then they piled on more pounds to make stiff semi-elliptic springs do their job. And all those extra pounds cost the owner extra money to lug around. But the Ambassador 600 is built by new methods, engineered like modern transport planes and streamlined trains, not like an old-fashioned automobile. Its body is roomier, yet lighter by hundreds of pounds, and stronger by actual test. So strong and rugged, in fact, that it needs no conventional frame. That is, body and chassis are a single welded unit, far less likely to squeak or rattle, far lighter, yet far stronger. Girders all around to protect you. That's Nash unitized construction. As for performance and economy, heavy cars require big, heavy engines to provide acceptable performance. And of course, that conventional engine, doing extra work with extra horsepower, has a bigger thirst for gasoline. But in the more efficient 600 engine, expensive extra horsepower is eliminated, since the car has no dead weight to be pulled around. Therefore, the more compact 600 engine, doing less work to give brilliant performance, naturally uses less gasoline and oil. Another point, the modern construction of the Ambassador 600 makes it possible to utilize a system of coil springing, never before used in a low-priced car. Our Ambassador 600 owners tell us it's the easiest riding low-priced car they've ever owned. That easy ride has been gained without piling on the extra weight, which destroys operating economy. But although its fundamental design is the chief reason for the amazing economy of the Ambassador 600, there are more reasons why this Nash car costs less to run. The fuel mixture is carried to the cylinders through passages inside the engine block. That's a Nash exclusive, sealed-in manifolding. And since temperatures within the engine block are obviously much the same all the year round, you drive all the year with the leanest, most economical summer mixture. With the optional 4th speed forward and automatic overtake, there's still more economy, as well as more spectacular performance. That is, for open road cruising, your engine loafs along at reduced revolutions and reduced gasoline consumption, but with no reduction at all in car speed. This also means less wear on moving parts and longer engine life. Just pushing the accelerator to the floor automatically puts the car back into the extra powerful 3rd gear, a driving, traffic-passing, hill-climbing gear.
No two ways about it. The Nash Ambassador 600 for 42 is built to order for economy-minded America. It carries on the sensational economy tradition set by its predecessor. That was the car, you remember, which beat all 6, 8, and 12-cylinder cars in the 1941 Gilmore Grand Canyon Run, Motordom's annual economy Olympic Games. And that same 1941 Ambassador 600 was the car which caused proud owners to write such unsolicited comments as these.
I'm getting well over 25 miles to a single gallon in my new Nash.
Why, this year I'm going to save about $265 driving a Nash instead of my former car.
Lots of them, letter after letter from every state in the Union, all telling the same great story. The 600 is tops in economy. And on the basis of careful tests by owners, made in every part of the country, covering thousands upon thousands of miles, we can say definitely that if you are an average American driver, driving under average conditions, this new Nash can save 1/3 of your present gasoline bill. As for performance, well, here's what Nash owners say.
This new Nash of ours sprints ahead of the rest like a scared dog.
This car holds the road in high winds even better than much larger cars I've driven.
Now, I'm a doctor. In 0 weather, I can always depend on my 600 to start immediately.
And the new Ambassador 600 will write a still greater success story. For one thing, there's new smoothness in performance due to new engineering of the flywheel. And pickup, with 1 horsepower for every 35 pounds of car weight, she'll get underway like a greyhound.
1942 buyers demand more than economy and performance. They demand a car that lasts longer, for they know that they may have to drive their 1942 car far longer than usual.
For 25 years, Nash cars have had a reputation for lasting longer. And now the newest and therefore the most modern engine production line in the automotive industry precision builds the Flying Scot engines of the Nash 600. Result? an engine which embodies long-life engineering and construction features normally found only in higher-priced cars. Example, the Flying Scot engine has rifle-drilled connecting rods to bring lubrication to the hard-working piston pins, an essential of complete full-pressure lubrication. Another example, the main bearings of the Flying Scot engine are much larger than the average car in its price class. That means longer bearing life and greater smoothness throughout the entire speed range. Example 3, Ambassador 600 crankshafts are balanced by radio in this precision machine. For precise balancing means extra smoothness, makes Nash engines last longer. Still more examples of durability. Full-length water jackets, an extra hard cylinder block, a crankshaft vibration damper. These are just a few of the quality features you find in the Ambassador 600 when you look below the surface.
For 1942 Americans also demand a comfortable, quiet car. And well, they should, for they may spend a good part of the next few years in the car they select today.
As the first comfort factor, consider 600 roominess. 57 5/8 inches of seating width in front, almost 5 feet of lounge-like seating, and a full 3.5 feet of legroom. In the rear, 4 feet 2 inches of seating width, and that same ample 3.5 feet of legroom, instead of the restricted legroom which most low-priced cars provide for rear seat passengers. New quiet is brought to the Ambassador 600 through 1942 advancements in soundproofing and in the cushioning of the engine's power impulses. To achieve this cushioning, there's a new flexible rubber mounting between the rear of the engine and the clutch housing. The pulsing beat of the engine is absorbed by the rubber, muffled so it cannot be transmitted to the rest of the car. Then, as a final step in producing a ride of tiptoe quiet, the clutch pedal linkage has been designed so that there is no contact between the linkage and the rear of the engine block. The linkage is therefore much less likely to transmit engine vibration. For riding comfort, the Ambassador 600 floats on 4 coil springs, a luxury car feature brought to the low-priced group by Nash. The Ambassador 600 is the only car in America with an enclosed front suspension like this one. It's the only suspension in which the up and down movement of the wheel is transmitted directly to its spring, without any intermediate linkages or bushings like these to create friction, which may make the spring less responsive. And remember, extra parts cost extra money when they wear out.
Then, to make 24-hour comfort possible, there's the optional sedan sleeper, the famous Nash bed in a car, the feature which makes your Ambassador 600 a vacation-time home on wheels. At your fingertips, there's proof that the 600 offers new driving comfort as well as riding comfort. A feather-light touch swings the wheel, for there's hundreds of pounds less weight to be controlled. The car turns in a 38-foot circle. You make U-turns in a single close-drawn sweep. And the Ambassador 600 is easy to park. You do it right the first time, because the 600 front suspension enables the wheels to turn more sharply. You do it with less effort, because of exclusive two-way steering.
There are many other convenience features in this new 600. Take the clutch pedal starter, which starts the engine as you depress the clutch pedal to the floor. No fumbling for the starter, no chance of accidentally starting the car in gear. Then there's fingertip door closing. All doors shut without slamming because of the rotary door latches. And they stay wide open, too, if you want it, because of the stay check. How's this for touring convenience? A 20 cubic foot trunk that'll swallow up that lineup of baggage like this. There's almost as much luggage space concealed beneath the flowing lines of the slipstream sedan.
And now we come to the greatest comfort feature of them all. This new permanently open cowl ventilator proclaims that Nash is the car with the optional weather eye system of conditioned air. Most significant single comfort feature of recent years. The one which has brought such enthusiastic statements as these from Nash owners.
The purchase price of our Nash was worth it over and over again, if only for the comfort we derive from the weather eye.
It gives you Florida inside the car while you're driving in the Berkshires of Connecticut during the winter. And that is not exaggerated.
There's no comparison to be made between this heating system and other heaters, no matter what the make of car.
Now, here's how the weather eye works. Fresh air pours through the big air intake on the cowl. It passes over a rain trap, through dust filters, and an oversized heating core, and out into the car. The warm, filtered air blankets the floorboard, and then circulates evenly through the passenger compartment. There's less than 3 degrees variation, too, in temperature at floor level. This year, the weather eye works more efficiently than ever before, because the thermostat, which controls its automatic operation, has been put in a new place, down where it reacts more quickly to temperature changes. As a result, it more quickly adjusts the temperature inside the car to the proper degree of comfort. But most important, the weather eye is your guarantee of constant fresh air ventilation with no fogged windows, constant automatic comfort, and constant safety, since the weather eye ends the danger of deadly carbon monoxide leaking into the passenger compartment. And all this is achieved merely by setting the conditioned air control to the amount of warmth you desire. From then on, the weather eye thermostat keeps the incoming air at that temperature, and your comfort is automatic.
In 1942, as always, safety is demanded by every car buyer. Here's the kind of safety that's built into the Nash Ambassador 600.
At 2 a.m. on February 13th, I was driving westward on Route 30, 15 miles east of Pocatello, Idaho. Coming over the brow of a hill at an extremely high rate of speed, I hit a sheet of ice. My car skidded, then hit the dry pavement, then shot off the road at, I'd say approximately 75 miles an hour, hitting a stone cliff. The impact was terrific. In fact, it knocked off one of my shoes. The car rolled over completely 4 times and came to a stop upside down. Well, I emerged from the wreck uninjured, except for superficial cuts on one hand. Now, in my estimation, the Nash 600 is the most sturdily constructed car of its class in America, and I feel that I owe my life to the material, construction, and engineering that have gone into the making of the Nash 600.
Yes, advanced engineering brings real safety, new safety to the Ambassador 600. Here's how it's done.
No longer is there a heavy frame underneath the passengers where it offers them the least protection. Instead, in the Ambassador 600's unitized construction, the frame is all around the passengers. You are surrounded by heavy structural members which form a web of steel on all sides, self-braced like the girders of a bridge. Add to this a field of vision wider because of Nash unitized construction, and oversized brakes with 143 1/2 square inches of lining area. Brakes which can either halt the car right now or ease it to a cushion-soft stop. The result? A car that's safer because it's more modern.
Thus, in 1942, Americans buy their cars carefully, seeking and comparing long-term values, and well they may. For the car they buy in 42 may be the car they are driving for many years. As for price, the Ambassador 600 was designed for today's pocketbook. This model is the one shown throughout the film, complete with deluxe equipment, yet priced in the lowest price class. This model has standard equipment. It can be purchased at a minimum price, and whatever equipment you select, you may have your choice of 5 body styles: coupe, coupe blome, 2-door slipstream sedan, 4-door slipstream sedan, and the 4-door trunk sedan. The Nash Ambassador 600 is the new kind of car which has already proved its money-saving ability in upwards of 350 million miles of actual service. It is the car with features never before offered in the lowest price field. Features which you can get only in the Nash Ambassador 600. It is the newest car on the market, the latest achievement of a $59 million corporation. In a word, the Nash 600 is the car of the hour, the car with longer life and lower operating costs, the $1 million beauty in the lowest price field. It's a careful, demanding scrutiny that new cars are getting this year as America goes to the automobile market. These 1942 models are being weighed for value, real basic dollar and cents value, just about as carefully as a jeweler weighs a valuable stone. And that's mighty smart buying. For your 1942 model automobile may be driven far longer than you usually keep a car. Therefore, it's more vital than ever this year to select a car that'll keep going for thousands upon thousands of miles without expensive repairs. Later on, we're going to explain just why a Nash lasts longer. However, you already know this. For more than a quarter of a century, Nash cars have been known as tough, rugged automobiles, built to last. Perhaps in your neighborhood, there's one of those Nash cars so old it seems to have no business on the highway, but which rolls along year after year in the hands of a pride-filled owner who swears by it, not at it. In like manner, the glittering 1942 Nash cars you've admired are built to give reliable transportation for 8, 9, 10 years if you ask it of them. Then, too, this year as never before, the price tag on any new automobile is going to be a most incomplete guide to its cost. The true cost will be announced by the clicking meters of the gas pumps as you drive that new car through the long years ahead. Already, gasoline prices are climbing. What their peak may be, no one knows. Still more ominous are the first appearances of gasoline shortages and their drastic remedies, closing of gas stations, gasless Sundays. And on the horizon, in almost every part of the country, is the outright rationing of gasoline, which should and will come the moment the needs of defense demand it. Under circumstances like these, we'll pass over the beauty of the new Nash cars, their massive front design, the long sweep of their body lines, and the low-slung appearance they have from the rear. We'll pass over all this beauty and go directly to the point which interests you the most, the reasons why a Nash is clearly the car for these times. It is not only the car that lasts longer, but it costs less to drive a Nash. We make that statement in all sincerity. We make it because we know from intimate experience the advanced engineering which designs these cars and the faithful, precise workmanship which builds them. It is this engineering and this workmanship which gives outstanding durability and economy to the Nash car. For instance, at the very time when your need for an economical car is greatest, today, Nash engineers offer the results of research which began when the needs of today were first predictable. 2 engines, a 6 and an 8, which have both been fundamentally improved so that they actually deliver more power from less gasoline. Here's the story.
The combustion chamber is the heart of any engine. There, the gasoline is burned, and the way it burns very largely determines how much power you get from each drop of fuel. So, the economy feature of 42 is the new Nash high turbulence combustion chamber, a fundamentally more efficient way of burning gasoline. At first glance, we see that the spark plug has been moved closer to the center of the charge of fuel, and the chamber itself is much smaller. As a result, the flame from the plug has less distance to travel. Combustion is quicker and more complete. But let's watch this improved chamber in operation and see how still more advantages are gained. Here, there's a charge of gasoline and air mixture in the cylinder, and the piston is on its way up, compressing the fuel mixture. Now then, notice that the small combustion chamber is off-center. Part of the fuel mixture, over there at the right, must eddy around that flat shoulder and then swirl into the combustion chamber. As the piston continues to rise, the whirling turbulence within the chamber increases, mixing gasoline and air, packing the well-mixed vapor tighter and tighter until the spark leaps out from the plug and flashes through the close-packed fuel. That's how the new design works. And here's what it does for the owner of a Nash. Advantage 1, more miles of peak performance. Since fuel is burned more completely, less carbon is formed, and new car performance lasts longer.
Advantage 2.
Higher compression of the fuel vapor, yet premium-priced fuel is not required to prevent pinging or knocking. Here's why. Complete combustion now takes less time. Therefore, the gas mixture doesn't have to be ignited so soon. That is, the spark doesn't have to be advanced so far. And then, too, research has shown that so-called hot spots in a combustion chamber may cause knocking by igniting the fuel too soon. Nash has licked this problem by enlarging water passages to bring more water closer to potential hot spots and installing baffles to send the water where it's needed.
Advantage number 3.
The more efficient cooling system makes Nash performance more uniform in all weather at all speeds.
Advantage number 4.
More power, more spectacular performance. According to numerous preliminary tests in the Nash engineering laboratories, there's greater horsepower in both the 6 and 8 engines for 1942. Greater pulling power, faster acceleration, and higher top speed. Performance so improved that you feel the difference the first mile you drive. And to get the full measure of this achievement, let's remember that last year's 6 and 8 were among the most spectacular performers in their price class.
But now, let's hear about the end result, the climax of this improvement for 1942. In the 6, you get up to 9.6% more miles to a gallon of gasoline. In the 8, gasoline saving by actual road test is improved as much as 12% over last year's model. And again, to realize just how much economy this means, we'll have to turn back to the economy record set up by the 1941 Nash 6 and 8, the record which has been bettered in 1942.
On file at Nash offices are the logbooks of more than 3,500 owners of 1941 Ambassador 6s and 8s. These are the owners' gallon-by-gallon reports of their gasoline purchases during more than 10 million miles of driving. Mileage equivalent to 42 trips to the moon. Mileage rolled up under every operating condition and at every speed. And even under those tough conditions, well over a third of the Ambassador 6 owners reported 18 miles per gallon or better. And almost a third of the Ambassador 8 owners reported the amazing big car record of 17 miles to the gallon or better.
Yes, in the Nash for 42, you can eat your cake and have it too. You can enjoy the flashing performance of a higher-powered car. Yet, you save money while doing it. Actually get more power out of less gasoline because of the new high-turbulence combustion chamber of the Nash Ambassador 6 and 8. In addition to the brand-new combustion chamber, the 1942 engines, of course, include the famous Nash features developed during the 26 years we have been perfecting this type of engine. First, a couple of the features that help to make a Nash more economical, make it cost less to drive.
Valve in head design, long proved fundamentally the most efficient type. This is the kind of engine which holds every speed record on land, at sea, and in the air. It's more efficient because it uses true downdraft carburation, a straight line flow of fuel into the combustion chamber, as contrasted with the up and down path the fuel must follow in an L-head engine. In addition, valves can be cooled more effectively in the valve-in-head engine. Cooling made more efficient than ever in the new Nash Ambassador 6 and 8 engines. And then again, in your new Nash, there's sealed-in manifolding. With this exclusive system, the fuel mixture is warmed to a uniform temperature as it enters the engine. As a result, your Nash Ambassador warms up more quickly and easily in cold weather, escapes such common hot weather trouble as hard starting, accelerates and performs uniformly regardless of speed or weather conditions. Best of all, sealed-in manifolding means greater economy because you can drive all year round with the leanest, most economical fuel mixture.
Now, we can't list all or even many of the reasons a Nash lasts longer, is more durable.
since a lot of those reasons are found in the extra care, the single added process, the one more inspection, which Nash puts into literally hundreds of manufacturing operations.
Among the major items are engine blocks of the special alloy used by Nash. Extra hard, extra wear resisting, and individually tested to make sure every single block meets Nash standards. Nash crankshafts have more main bearings than ordinary ones, 7 in the 6-cylinder engine, 9 in the 8. The crankshaft is supported more rigidly. Distortion and bearing wear is minimized. The area of those bearings, to the best of our knowledge, at the time this film was produced, is greater than in any car in the Ambassador price class. Therefore, wear is less and the engine retains its new car smoothness longer. And then, too, Nash removes a 3-ton centrifugal load from the bearings by hollow drilling the crank pins. Naturally, wear is again reduced. And finally, this radio balancing machine helps achieve the extra precise crankshaft balance, which means velvety engine smoothness lasting for more thousands of miles. Every Nash engine is guarded by complete full-pressure lubrication. And by that word complete, we mean that the connecting rods are rifle-drilled, an expensive operation, but essential to make sure that oil reaches the hard-working piston pins. And then there are other durability features like individually cooled cylinders with full-length water jackets, sealed cooling, and a cross-flow radiator, each one adding miles to the life of the car, which may have to and can serve you far longer than usual.
Now, in all our discussion of engine features, we've been talking about both the 6 and 8-cylinder models. That 8-cylinder engine is another reason the Nash is the car in tune with the times. The car which will give you more long-term motoring satisfaction in a year when any car is a long-term investment. Up to this year, it was necessary to buy a premium price car to get the premium performance Ambassador 8-cylinder engine, the finest engine Nash craftsmen build. But this year, you can, if you wish, have this big 8-cylinder Ambassador for only a few dollars more than the 6. You now have your choice of 2 fine and famous engines. The Ambassador 6 with its 105 flashing horsepower, or the Ambassador 8 with its 115.
For safe control of that power, there are extra large hydraulic brakes with 176 square inches of lining area and cast iron drum surfaces. There's still more safety in the unitized construction of the Nash body, the body in which every structural part is a brace, in which you ride surrounded by a network of protecting steel structural members. Moreover, this extra strong body with its built-in frame is reinforced by a rugged chassis frame, giving the safety of a double frame. And this body, because it's built like an airplane fuselage to get maximum strength and maximum room inside, but without excess weight, has achieved a new standard of interior roominess. There's leg-stretching, lounging comfort in this car, provable by tape measure, but better proved by just climbing in the car yourself and learning firsthand how comfortable you'll be in the car you're going to live in for so long. And while you're at it, hunt the bumps on the roughest road in the neighborhood and feel how the Nash independent front suspension eases you over them with never a jolt. Part of the credit, of course, goes to the big airplane-type shock absorbers, which are placed inside the coil springs so they can act directly on the springs. And in the rear, similar vertical mounting of the shock absorbers means that you get full cushioning effect on all 4 wheels.
Now for the Nash weatherized system of conditioned air, the greatest single step ever made toward achieving fireside comfort on the highway. Here's how it works.
You set the new numbered control to the amount of heat you require for complete comfort. And then, as the weather eye swings into operation, fresh air pours through the new permanently open cowl intake at the rate of 400 cubic feet a minute. This intake is permanently open for year-round comfort, yet rain cannot enter. Dust is removed from the incoming air. The filtered air is warmed at the oversized heating coil, and then flows past a thermostat. If there is any variation from the temperature you have specified, the thermostat, newly located this year, automatically increases the amount of heat or decreases it. The warm, filtered air then circulates evenly through the passenger compartment. And as it does so, it makes the air pressure inside the car slightly higher than outside. Stale air is therefore forced out, and deadly carbon monoxide gas cannot leak in. Thus, the Weather Eye brings you constant ventilation with fresh air, constant comfort, and constant safety from carbon monoxide. And to accomplish all this, your only job is to set that control knob. After that, everything is automatic, just as automatic as the thermostat of a modern warm air conditioning system in a home.
Fourth speed forward with automatic overtake is another famous Nash feature, optional on your new Nash. Here's what it does.
Above 32 miles an hour, the fourth speed forward automatically comes into operation. It cuts engine speed 30% without reducing car speed. In other words, while your Ambassador travels at, say, 60 miles an hour, the engine runs at only 42 miles an hour. As a result, you get more miles to the gallon of gasoline. Oil mileage is increased. Engine wear is reduced. All of these savings increasing the farther you drive your 42 Nash. And performance is more sparkling since just pressing the accelerator to the floor automatically puts the car into a third gear that's more powerful than most, a sprinting, traffic-passing, hill-climbing gear.
And there's the famous Nash sedan sleeper, also optional.
In 3 minutes, a roomy, comfortable bed is ready and waiting for you.
Then there are such features as aero-straight steering, draftless ventilation, a 20-gallon gas tank, the clutch pedal starter.
There's the beauty of the new interiors with 4 luxurious fabrics available.
All these and many other Nash features can be yours when you slip behind the wheel of your 1942 Ambassador 6 or 8 and begin a new experience in driving pleasure. No matter which model you select, whether it's the model with deluxe equipment shown throughout this film or the one with standard equipment, the same fine car with simpler equipment and accessories. No matter which body style you select, coupe, brougham, 2-door slipstream sedan, 4-door slipstream sedan, or 4-door trunk sedan. No matter which car you choose, you get a car with more trouble-free miles built into it, a car whose operating economy will be read upon the gas pumps during the thousands of miles you drive it. Then, too, in this car, which you'll probably drive far longer than usual, you get the beauty, the comfort, and the sparkling performance that'll make your long-term investment a long-term thrill. In a word, when you own the new Nash Ambassador, either the 6 or the 8, you own the car for the times, the car for the needs of today.
Music of peak performance, airplane engines roaring their steady song of power. But to make sure these mighty engines will deliver peak performance in the air, they are carefully tuned up before they leave the ground. Streamlined trains have set new records for fast and dependable transportation on rails. And who are the men who help to set these records? The men in the roundhouses, who make sure these streamlined beauties are mechanically right before they start each run. Nash cars are built to give peak road performance with record-breaking gasoline economy. That's why people buy Nash cars and continue to drive them and like them year after year. And it's our business as Nash service craftsmen to see that outstanding performance and high gasoline mileage are maintained whether the speedometer reads 1 mile or 100,000. Yes, it's up to us, even with a brand new car. For every new Nash should be tuned up before it's delivered to the buyer. It's true, of course, that the car was tuned before it left the factory, but it's very possible that some of the units will require minor readjustment, or the battery may run down in storage. If the car gets into the new owner's hands in this condition, something like this is likely to happen.
Say, I couldn't even start this car this morning. Had to get pushed, and I just took delivery on it yesterday.
Obviously, no Nash service craftsman wants to let things like this happen. However, most of our work is going to be with cars already in service. For, as with any other fine mechanism, Nash cars require periodic attention to keep them in tip-top condition. Performance, dependability, and economy are bound to taper off as months of operation pile up. When this happens, a high level of efficiency can be restored only by a thorough tune-up. And good tune-up, the kind that gets results, is not only welcomed by the owner, but it's profitable business for you. The profit from one tune-up job may not be large, but the profit from repeated tune-up jobs for the same satisfied customer is greater. And you get still more profit because you have a chance to check the regular customer's car periodically, find what's wrong, and sell him what he needs before he has a chance to go elsewhere. We all know this, just as we all know that good tune-up is the only kind that pays off. However, to get a car to run better and more economically, we must check every unit which contributes to performance and economy. That's the only surefire method, as we all have learned from bitter experience. Yet, every tune-up department has one inflexible boss, the clock. Tune-up profits are measured by tune-up time. Therefore, basically, our problem is to give the customer the better, more thorough tune-up job he demands and do it in the time we can afford to put on it. In other words, the need is for a modern, time-saving method of turning out a better tune-up job faster. And that, very briefly, is the purpose of the brand new Nash Technical Handbook on tune-up. It offers a new and better tune-up procedure, which applies in detail to the Nash 600, with particular emphasis on the 1946 models. As far as general sequence is concerned, the same procedure applies to Nash Ambassador models and to cars of other makes. But why is it a better procedure? Well, for one thing, it's modern, designed for today's cars, using today's methods. It's complete, testing all units which affect performance and economy. For example, the choke linkage on cars with manual choke required tests for freedom of action. In today's cars, however, the automatic choke should be cleaned and reset. Similar improvements in the latest models make other changes in the procedure necessary. Another and more basic advance in the new procedure is this. Units are tested for the results they produce, not for mere adjustment to prescribed specifications. For instance, as you well know, one way to check distributor point spacing is to gauge the distance the points break. Yet, the dwell angle, or how long the points are in contact, is the important thing from a performance standpoint. Furthermore, precise timing of the distributor to the engine is also important. A distributor cam, worn to a barely noticeable degree, may cause timing trouble that is blamed on something else. A visual check of the cam or even close gauging of the points won't always tell the whole story. Only tests made under simulated operating conditions with modern testing equipment can show the results produced by the units. The new Nash procedure not only recommends tests which show results, but the entire procedure is organized to help you do a more thorough job, easier and faster. It uncovers the more common troubles as quickly as possible. For example, the cranking voltage test serves as a good overall check of the starting system. Similarly, the compression test indicates the condition of the pistons, rings, and valves. Then, if one of these general tests shows something wrong, the handbook describes further tests which will quickly locate the exact source of the trouble. Throughout the book, you'll find the measurements and specifications you require to make adjustments, and these facts are placed right where you need them. The arrangement of the handbook simplifies the use of modern testing equipment, of which a number of good makes are available. This equipment comes in separate units and in complete outfits. With the right kind of equipment, it's possible to perform the tests called for in the new Nash procedure quickly and thoroughly, since every unit affecting performance and economy can be tested under conditions which approximate actual operation. For example, the dwell angle of the breaker points can be tested while the distributor shaft is being rotated at car operating speeds. In addition, tests for exact contact spacing for each cylinder and for hidden resistance can be made. Likewise, tests for proper fuel mixture can be made efficiently, quickly, and accurately at engine idling speed, on acceleration, and at engine cruising speed. It's a simple matter to check cylinder compression for indications of worn pistons and rings, sticky valves, burned valve seats, and leaky head gaskets. Moreover, such equipment creates a fine selling atmosphere which increases the owner's confidence in the work you're doing on his car. But to hold this confidence, the work must be done completely and well. In the final analysis, your attitude toward the tune-up is the most important factor. Even modern equipment won't help if important units are slighted or if conditions about which the owner complains are not corrected. To make sure you correct these conditions, do two things. First, get the owner's story. Find out what he thinks is wrong.
When I'm accelerating at high speed, the engine misses. Doesn't seem to have the pep it should. And I'm not getting the gas mileage I used to either.
Mr. Cooper, that could be caused by a number of things. And a tune-up will show what's wrong. It will certainly make your car run better and save you gasoline, too.
Well, Tom, do you think this tune-up is all I need?
Well, if we find any condition which the tune-up won't correct, we'll phone you.
With the owner's complaint marked on the service order, you know what to look for, especially during the tune-up procedure. But don't just correct this condition. Follow the complete procedure, from battery to road test, as outlined in the Nash Technical Handbook on tune-up. Like a runner failing to touch second, shortcuts in tuning are likely to bring unpleasant results. Anytime you skip part of the routine, you're asking for trouble. As sure as you decide it isn't necessary to test fuel pump pressure and vacuum, that will be the car of the day with too much fuel pump pressure. And later,
That carburetor still keeps flooding. And I had you tune the car just a couple of days ago.
or you may have to do some operation the hard way later on to get other units to work right. For example, you may be worried because carburetor adjustments won't make the engine idle smoothly. And all the while, timing, which you didn't test first, is the cause of your trouble. However, if you perform each operation in logical sequence, you save a lot of backtracking, and you get the job done more quickly and better. Then, you're ready for the road test you give every tuned-up car, the final test of everything you've done. For road testing cars, the ideal route would be one that would permit you to test acceleration and high speed on an open road. But this is seldom possible. So the least you can do is drive the car around several blocks over a route that will permit you to test its performance in traffic and find out how the engine idles under actual driving conditions. The type of gasoline in the tank usually indicates the kind the owner buys. If the engine knocks under a load, you may find you should retard the spark a bit. On the other hand, if the owner uses high-octane fuel, your road test may show that you can advance the timing for greater efficiency. However, a curbstone adjustment is not likely to improve a tune-up which was made with precision instruments. Therefore, note any deficiencies during the road test, but make the adjustments back at the shop where you have the equipment you need. And on your way back, keep your eyes and ears open for anything the owner might observe where he's seated beside you. Make sure the car acts and handles right, since that's the way the owner's going to judge the value of your tune-up. But there's still one thing more, and it's very important: delivery of the tuned-up car. Here is a real opportunity to build goodwill and future service business. For example, a dirty steering wheel or soiled car irritates the owner. Therefore, not only use clean seat and wheel covers, but make sure the owner sees them being used. For that matter, believe it or not, the tune-up job will probably look better through a clean windshield than through a dirty one. We all know owners appreciate courtesy and interest, and it takes just a little time to tell them you've taken pains with their car. Maybe like this.
Mr. Cooper, we gave your car a thorough tune-up. We found some bad distributor points, so we replaced them. The engine is smooth at high speed now. Timing was your main trouble. but we inspected and adjusted every unit that affects performance and economy.
Fine, Tom. That's the reason I like to bring my car in here for service.
Thanks. You know, a tune-up like this every 5,000 miles or so will keep your car performing at its best.
That's the idea. Tell them what you've done and what to expect. They're more certain to notice improvement, appreciate it, and come again. And as we've already seen, the customers who return are the ones that make tune-up profitable by a steady volume of work for the shop, by the big jobs that come from customers who are tied to your shop by regular tune-ups, and by the new car sales, which result when your owners brag about their choice of a Nash.
Why, I've got 60,000 on my Nash, running mighty sweet, too.
Yes, tune-up is very important in any dealership. And the new Nash Technical Handbook on tune-up is designed to make it profitable for you, since it gives a procedure for doing the kind of job your customer wants in the time you have to do it. It's the modern, efficiently organized way to make your customers' cars perform better, last longer, and cost less to run.
Thanks, Dorothy. Joe?
Yeah?
Come here a minute, will you? Say, Joe, remember the other day when you first came to work?
Will I ever forget?
Yeah, I know. But seriously, I tried to explain to you how the Nash 600 bodies were different from the kind you were used to working on.
Yeah, and I'm still not sure I get it.
I was afraid maybe I didn't make it clear. Now, if I'd had this, I'd have been able to do better. Let's take a look at it together. Some of this may be pretty elementary, but let's not take chances. We'll start at the beginning. Now, here's a good picture that tells the story of how the frame shapes up inside these Nash bodies. In fact, the body frame and chassis and body are all welded together in one piece. Of course, there is a chassis, and this is it. But it isn't something the body bolts to, like in the cars you're familiar with. You can see here how the chassis and body frame are all part of each other.
Yeah, and the body panels are welded right onto both.
Right. By using arched girders and welding them together, the parts strengthen each other. That means Nash can cut down on unnecessary weight and still have a stronger body than with any other kind of construction.
Well, that makes sense, but doesn't that make a lot of difference in how you work on these bodies?
Any big improvement means changes all down the line. But just because the work is different doesn't mean it has to be a lot harder. In fact, once you get really acquainted with these bodies, you'll wonder why you had trouble in the beginning. But let's go on. Now we're getting down to details. Here's the front end of the body of the Nash 4640. You can see how the body frame, the chassis, and the body panels are all welded together. This makes a solid steel structure to which the front suspension assembly can be attached. The whole front suspension assembly is built up on this rigid box-type cross member, which is mounted to the body sills by 4 bolts. The bolts are insulated with rubber bushings to keep the road noises out of the body. And the engine front support mountings have been moved in the 1946 line. This gives better clearance for taking off the engine oil pan without disturbing the wheel alignment.
Here's the dope on the 41 and 42 cars, too.
Yeah. But let's skip over them for the moment. The main difference between these bodies and the ones you're used to is that there's no separate chassis. What would be the chassis is welded to the floor units, and therefore it also serves as body side sills. The work of the usual heavy cross members and braces is done by the floor units. This adds a lot of strength at a lot less weight. Each part adds its strength to the strength of all the parts to which it is welded. When any one of these parts is severely damaged, it's a simple matter to replace it with a new one. Now, the body frame and side panels are built right onto this unit you see here and welded together. Here's how the body panels look before they're assembled with the floor and roof and other panels into the skeleton body. And here they are welded together. All one piece, solid steel. Now, I think there are some pictures showing just how those parts are fitted together to form this body. Yeah, here we are. You see those dotted lines showing where the panel assemblies weld together? Now, the thing to remember about these pictures is that in case any one of the body panels is damaged beyond repair, we can get a brand new one and weld it right in place of the damaged one. For instance, if this front wheelhouse panel on the right is to be replaced, we break the welds that hold it to the cowl side panel assembly, the dash to sill brace assembly, and to the side sill, and weld the new one right in. Of course, you have to straighten the other parts before you weld in the new panel.
Can you put in new panels on other parts of the body?
Sure. This picture shows where you would break the welds along the side of a four-door sedan if you had to replace any of these parts.
Well, let's see. That's still the four-door sedan, isn't it?
That's right. And the same principle of construction holds here at the back, too. Notice that rear quarter side panel assembly? We saw that panel assembly by itself a few minutes ago. Yeah, here we are.
Well, with that one, I guess it's better to put in a new one rather than trying to straighten one that's badly damaged.
Right. And not only with that one either. Often replacing a panel or assembly will not only make a much better finished job, but it'll cost less as well. Here's the same view as the last, but in the two-door coach body. These pictures will be a lot of help. With all the section lines and the names of the parts, you can order replacements and be sure of getting a part that'll fit.
You have to give the year and model, too.
Of course. Now, here's a good picture under the dash before the instrument panel is put on.
Yeah, it shows how those assemblies weld together.
And where all the equipment is mounted. Now, this is where you have to watch out. Notice that the inner front body pillar is a part of the cowl side assembly.
Yeah, I see that.
Good. Now let's go back a moment to the roof panel assembly. Here we are. Notice that the front body pillar panels are a part of the roof panel assembly. And these panels go on the outside of the front body pillars that we see in this picture. Now keep that in mind. We'll come back to it later. By the way, how are you making out on that 4640 you started on a little while ago?
Well, not very well so far. But now that I'm getting the idea of how these bodies are put together, it'll be a lot easier.
Sure. Once you get the hang of these bodies, I think you'll find work on them is duck soup. You know, Joe, seems to me this book ought to help us out a lot.
Are you going to keep it around for a while so I can look stuff up in it? Until I get to know my way around.
Brother, this is your copy. It's for you to keep and use as a reference for the names of parts, for replacement panels, and for tips on how to do the work. After all, the best of us can forget, but if we look it up here, we'll have it right every time. Now let's see what else there is in here. This part deals with actual repairs. For instance, that's a pretty typical kind of a wreck. We're likely to get one like it every so often. Here's another one, just about as typical. Now, the first thing we do with any wreck is to identify the car. Serial and body and model numbers, as well as trim and paint numbers, must be noted. It's a mighty important step, and it only takes a few minutes. This is the same car we were looking at a few minutes ago, taken from the other side. Notice how that quarter panel is buckled? When the accident happened, the underbody frame was pushed forward in relation to the upper body. With the fender off, you can see the kink in the left underframe member. And under the right side, the side sill is sprung outward, and the lower spot-welded flange is opened under the rear door opening. Now, for straightening, the underbody floor and frame come first. This setup of clamps and body jacks does the trick for this particular damage. And remember, when you work on the body frame of the Nash 600, you're also working on the chassis frame. That means you want to be careful to get these check dimensions right on the button. Of course, you'll often need more than one body jack to put the pressure in the right direction to straighten her out properly. Then comes the body. Here we have to make a lot of measurements, vertical, horizontal, and diagonal. Of course, we want to lay out the marks we're going to use in all the measurements before we start. By taking measurements between the same points on both sides of the body, if there is any difference between them, it immediately shows the misalignment. Then with the body jack, we can force it back into alignment until both sides measure the same, diagonally, horizontally, and vertically. Here again, you may need to use more than one body jack at a time, but there's nothing especially hard about it if you remember that badly damaged panels can be replaced. And by the way, we don't have to replace a whole panel if we don't need to. Here's a case where only the roof itself was damaged beyond repair. After careful measurements, the cowl top and the front body pillar panels and the bottom of the rear window were cut from the whole assembly, and the roof only was fitted to the body, like this. In this case, a lot of time was saved by not having to remove and re-weld the cowl top and the front body pillars. The same kind of operations are saved at the back. Well, once the body's all straight again, it'll have to be resealed along many of the seams. This will prevent leaks where air, dust, and water can get in. An oil can with a spout cut off makes a pretty good tool for this work. Then the insulating pads have to be cemented down again, like you see in this picture. This insulating material is called sand Mortex and is used on the trunk floor and on the inside of the doors.
How do you put it on, with a trowel?
Some men prefer a trowel and some use a brush. I think maybe the brush is easier to use when you're putting it on the inside of the door panel.
Yeah, I can see that.
Say, here's a body lubrication chart.
What's that doing in here?
It's probably there to remind us to see that each body is carefully lubricated before we turn the finished job over to the customer. And just to make the book complete, they've put in a lot of dope on how to clean upholstery and leather, a section on painting, and a lot of other helpful information. Well, there it is, Joe. Keep it handy where you can get at it. And don't be afraid to use it once in a while. It'll save time on the job and a lot of headaches, too.
Don't worry about me using it. I'm hot for anything that might make my job easier. And for my dough, this'll do it, and then some.
This film covers the major points in disassembling and assembling the Nash 60 series transmission with governor-controlled overdrive. Your technical manual gives the complete procedure for servicing all of these units in the Nash line. One of the advantages of Nash transmissions and overdrives is that you can disassemble the transmission completely without taking the overdrive apart. Or you can disassemble the overdrive without taking down the transmission. To disassemble the transmission, first remove the shift levers from the shafts and with a small punch, drive the lock pins out through the top. Then, with the cover and baffle plate removed, press in on the low and high speed finder plungers and lock them in position with the lock screw. The quadrant and shaft assemblies can then be driven toward the outside of the case and the seals and sleeves removed. Then, after moving the low-speed gear and the synchro clutch collar toward the rear of the case, remove the interlock and the shifter forks. When that's done, remove the plug at the rear of the overdrive case and, using the aligning tool, drive out the countershaft and let the cluster gear drop onto the small end of the tool. This will provide clearance so that the overdrive and spline shaft can be removed from the case. Bolt the rear bearing adapter to the overdrive to keep this unit intact. The transmission spline shaft and gears remain with the overdrive as it is removed. However, the front friction ring is removed as the spline shaft separates from the clutch shaft. To remove the gears from the spline shaft, depress the lock retainer lock pin. This makes it possible to remove the retainer just by turning it one spline, then sliding it off the shaft. With the lock retainer off, remove the synchro clutch, the bronze thrust washer, the second speed gear, and the steel thrust washer. Then remove the low and reverse sliding gear. Incidentally, if the spline shaft needs replacement, the overdrive must also be disassembled. Next, remove the front bearing cap screws and take off the cap. The transmission clutch shaft can then be worked out of the case with the bearing. With the shaft out, remove the snap ring and press off the bearing. The bearing lock ring need not be removed unless the bearing is to be replaced. Next, jar the clutch shaft lightly against a block. If the roller bearings in the end of the shaft fall out, they are worn and should be replaced. To complete the disassembly of the unit, remove the cluster gear and thrust washers from the transmission case, and, using a long punch, drive the reverse idler gear shaft out through the rear. Then, remove the gear. With that done, the transmission is completely disassembled and ready for a careful inspection of every part. Putting the transmission back together is no more of a problem than taking it apart. Start by replacing the reverse idler gear, making sure the beveled side is toward the front. Then, install the cluster gear and front thrust washer and slip the rear thrust washer in through the rear of the case. Line up the gear and washers with the countershaft tool, working from the front of the case. Then let the gear drop to the bottom of the case. Next, install the two quadrant and shaft assemblies, the one with the notches closer together toward the front. Now for the clutch shaft. After pressing the front bearing onto the clutch shaft, being sure to use a lock ring of the correct thickness, install the snap ring using the special snap ring tool. Then, install the clutch shaft and bearing in the case with the front bearing cap, using a new gasket and making sure that the oil return hole is at the bottom. To reassemble the spline shaft gears, install the low sliding gear with the shift collar to the rear. Then, put on the steel thrust washer, the second speed gear, and the bronze thrust washer. Install the synchro clutch with a shallow recess to the rear. Then you can replace the lock retainer, miking it to be sure it will give from 2 to 4 thousandths end play in the second speed gear. Place the overdrive and spline shaft assembly in the transmission case, slipping the front friction ring into position as the spline shaft is inserted in the clutch shaft bearing. Then, gauge the clearance of the front friction ring with the two clearance tools. If there's not enough, add shims between the rear bearing plate and the case. Now, turn the transmission upside down so the cluster gear will drop into position. At the same time, push the large end of the aligning tool through the cluster gear. Turn the transmission upright again and install the counter shaft from the front of the transmission. Keep the shaft tight against the tool as you tap it into place. Then, install the shifter forks, the interlock plate, and the oil trough. Install the sleeves from the outside of the case, grooved end out, and replace the lock pins. Then, install the seals. You can now adjust the speed finder set screw. Finally, bolt the baffle plate and cover onto the case. That completes the assembly of the transmission. So now, let's take a look at the overdrive. The first step in disassembling the overdrive is to remove the shift switch and governor control. Then, drive out the lock pin with a small punch. When that's done, the shaft can be pulled free of the shifting rail in the overdrive. Then remove the companion flange. This will allow the overdrive case to be separated from the rear bearing adapter. Always keep the bearing adapter bolted to the transmission so that the gears won't be separated. After the case has been removed from the overdrive, pull the main shaft and gear off the pinion gears and remove the rollers. Then, take off the cam retaining clip, which holds the cam and pinion cage on the spline shaft. The cam and roller assembly can be separated from the pinion cage by removing the pinion cage retaining clip and sliding the cage off the spline shaft. The overdrive lockout shift rail and the sun gear and collar can now be removed from the spline shaft. Snap rings hold the shift collar on the sun gear. Then, remove the solenoid by taking out the cap screws, turning the unit clockwise 1/4 turn to unlock the plunger from the solenoid pawl, and pulling it out. Next, using a pair of pliers, remove the snap ring that holds the stationary gear plate and cover plate to the bearing adapter. Removing the cover plate allows the stationary gear plate to be removed. Then, remove the solenoid pawl. When that's done, test the tension of the Bach ring. When you push one end of the ring away from the other, the ring should slip around the stationary gear plate. But when you push one end toward the other, a compressing action, the ring should grab and hold. Incidentally, if a new ring must be installed, remember that the chamfer of the ring goes toward the plate. And another thing, if for any reason the transmission spline shaft must be taken out, remove the rear bearing plate with the spline shaft and gears from the transmission, just as you would in disassembling the transmission itself. Now, remove all of the gears from the shaft. Then, remove the large snap ring from the transmission side of the rear bearing plate, and take the spline shaft and bearing out of the bearing plate, being careful not to damage the oil baffle. Finally, remove the snap ring and press the bearing from the spline shaft. To remove the overdrive rear bearing, first, take out the snap ring with a screwdriver. Then remove the rear bearing, the speedometer drive gear, and the governor drive gear. The inner bearing will then slide out easily. Now the overdrive is completely disassembled and ready for a careful inspection of all its component parts. If any part shows excessive wear, it must, of course, be replaced. To reassemble the unit, first, place the oil baffle in the rear bearing adapter and press the bearing onto the spline shaft. Then, lock it into the bearing adapter with a snap ring, just thick enough to fill the groove. Now, replace all of the gears on the spline shaft, install the assembly in the transmission case, and temporarily bolt it in place. Next, install the stationary gear plate, the Bach ring, and the cover plate in the rear bearing adapter. And, as you put on the cover plate and snap ring, install the solenoid pawl on the step of the Bach ring with the recess turned out. Install the solenoid by turning it counterclockwise so the plunger will lock with the pawl. Then, install the sun gear and collar on the spline shaft with the shift rail and fork assembly. Slide the pinion cage onto the spline shaft, being careful not to distort the oil slinger. And install the cam roller assembly, lining up the slots of the pinion cage with the cam. Then put in the pinion cage retainer clip and the cam retainer clip. With the retainer clips in place, put the rollers back in the freewheel cam assembly, holding them in place with a rubber band. Slip the overdrive main shaft over the rollers, turning it in a counterclockwise direction, so the rollers will stay in place until the main shaft is installed. Fasten the rear bearing in the overdrive case with the snap rings. Then install the governor drive gear, the speedometer drive gear, and the front bearing. Then line up the drive gears so the shaft will enter freely. Make sure the shifter shaft return spring is properly located in the overdrive case. As the case is being installed, make sure that the shifter shaft is in line with the hole in the case. Then, bolt the overdrive case to the transmission, turning the transmission gears to see that the assembly is free. Now, reinstall the governor control and shift switch. With that, the assembly of the overdrive is complete. However, many overdrive troubles come not from the unit itself, but from the electrical circuit which controls the unit. So let's see just how that circuit works. The overdrive is controlled by a series of switches in the governor circuit. Under certain conditions, these switches energize the relay, which in turn operates the solenoid and engages the solenoid pawl. Here's how the circuit works. When the car is operating at less than 22 miles an hour, the governor switch is the only open switch in the governor circuit. But that's enough to keep the whole circuit open, and the solenoid pawl remains disengaged. That is, the solenoid pawl is not engaged with the stationary gear plate, leaving the sun gear free to turn and the overdrive in direct gear. However, as the speed of the car passes 22 miles an hour, the points in the governor automatically close, thus closing the governor circuit and the relay, which energizes the solenoid. Then, with a momentary release of the accelerator pedal, the torque is released, and the solenoid pawl engages the stationary gear plate, putting the overdrive into cruising gear. The big thing to remember is that any time there's an open switch in the governor circuit, the solenoid pawl is disengaged and the overdrive is in direct gear. On the other hand, whenever the governor circuit is closed, the solenoid pawl is engaged and the overdrive is in cruising gear. A few other points about overdrive operation. Pulling the cruising gear control all the way out locks the overdrive in direct gear. Whenever the overdrive is locked out or the transmission is in reverse, the shifting rail in the overdrive opens the shift switch in the governor circuit, thus disengaging the pawl. When the car is in cruising gear at speeds above 22 miles an hour, depressing the foot accelerator all the way to the floor will kick the overdrive back into direct gear. This is caused by the fact that the accelerator is connected to the kick-down switch. Opening the throttle opens the kick-down switch, thus breaking the governor circuit and de-energizing the solenoid. At the same time, it momentarily shorts out the distributor circuit, just long enough to release the torque on the engine. Releasing the engine torque momentarily allows the pawl to move out, opening the secondary set of solenoid points. The open points restore the distributor circuit, leaving the governor circuit open. That basically is the function of the overdrive. Before a disassembly of an overdrive, a thorough inspection of all its electrical units should always be made. For example, test the speed at which the governor points close using a tachometer, because it is the closing and opening of these points that cuts the cruising gear in and out. And with an overdrive that won't cut in at all, inspect the 20-ampere fuse at the relay. As a matter of fact, every part of the governor circuit and overdrive control mechanism should be thoroughly tested and inspected according to the procedures detailed in your Nash technical manual. For it is only by the use of careful and accurate service techniques that a transmission, or an overdrive, or any unit can be returned to service with the same high standards of performance that Nash originally built into it.
Meet the boss? Who do you mean? Oh, you mean the service manager. It's the sales manager for me. Nah, the dealer's the boss.
No, I'm not thinking of either your department heads or your dealer. The boss I'm thinking about is the boss of the dealer, the boss of the department heads, the boss of every employee in the dealership. In fact, he's the boss of the entire factory organization as well. For the boss I'm talking about is the customer. It's our customers who pay our wages. They have the say as to whether or not we stay in business. For I guess we all realize, no customers, no business.
You mean all those people who come into the dealership are our boss?
I mean just that. And since that is the case, it's pretty important to us to know how the boss feels about us, what he thinks of the treatment we give him. We can find out because the boss talks. He's been saying plenty, and still is for that matter, about the way we treat him. Let's find out about this. Let's listen to what some of our customers, these bosses of ours, are actually saying about us.
And the guys in their service department, boy, did they burn me up.
Middleburg, Nash. Darned if they'll get my dough now.
Not if they're the last dealership in the world.
I haven't much faith in that dealership. I'm afraid I'll be lucky to get my car back in as good shape as it was.
Maybe it is just a little thing, but it's damned annoying. And a new car shouldn't do that.
Honestly, you'd think those garage people could be a little more careful. What? Yes. That's what I told them. If they don't want our business any more than that, I guess we can find somebody who does.
The way those guys act, you'd think they were the only ones in town that could fix my car. Well, maybe they'll find out different.
Say, those customers sound plenty sore. And when the people who provide our income feel that way about us, it's not good. We're really in a bad position. That being the case, let's go into this a little deeper. Let's get each of these customers to tell us exactly what happened. And from that, maybe we can find the answer to the question, what does the boss really expect of us? When he comes into our dealership, what does he want? Well, here's our first customer, Mr. Don Jenkins.
I'm a salesman, and a busy one. The other day, I had an hour before my next appointment, so I thought I'd take my car in to have it lubricated. I took it to the dealership where I bought the car. I figured they ought to be able to take better care of it than anybody else. So I drove in, and no one even noticed me. I just stood around, getting shorter on time every minute. Finally, I spoke to one of the men working there.
Huh?
I'm in kind of a hurry. Do you suppose I can get my car lubricated right away?
Talk to one of the service salesmen. I don't write up no jobs.
With that, I lost my temper. I piled into my car and wheeled it out fast. Now, I didn't want much when I went into that dealership. I only wanted to know if they could lubricate my car. All it took was for somebody to say hello and ask me what I wanted. Somebody to give me a little prompt attention.
A little prompt attention. Prompt attention, then, is one thing our boss wants. Let's chalk that up where we won't forget it. Now for our next customer, Mr. Ted Webster, late of the United States Army.
Well, I'm married and starting a business of my own. I need a new car bad. But when I called the Nash dealership, I got this.
A new car? Oh, brother, you and 1,000 others. Well, I'll see if one of the salesmen will talk to you.
Hello. Nope, not a chance. Couldn't fix you up for 6 months at least, probably longer. You want to speak to the dealer? Well, I won't do you any good, but okay.
Sorry, can't do a thing for you. No use even taking your name. Now, a good used car, maybe? No? Well, Bud, for you it looks like a used car or the street car.
That made me good and sore. Now, I didn't expect them to turn the place inside out just to get me a car. But I think I had a right to expect that they would at least listen to my problem and give me a courteous answer. Courtesy doesn't cost anything, you know.
Courtesy, then, is the second thing the boss wants. Just a few little words like, well, I'm sorry, thank you, I'll be with you in a minute, excuse me. Words that tell him you appreciate his coming to you. And even when you have to say no, make it a sorry no. Our next customer, Dr. Eugene Rader.
I'm a surgeon, and my car is one of the most important instruments I have. I must keep it in top condition at all times. When I drove into the dealership the other day, my engine was making a noise that had me worried. I tried to explain to the serviceman. It makes a sort of ticking noise. I'm inclined to think...
Sure, I know. That's your distributor. We'll fix her up for you. Anything else?
Now, in my opinion, that was both rude and unwise. I can't have much faith in an organization whose employees don't even have the patience to listen to my problem and discover my needs.
A third point the boss wants, patience. He's only human. He likes to state his problems, and he likes to have people pay him some attention and ask questions to get at the cause of the trouble. The next customer, Mr. J.B. Harris.
I'm a banker. My Nash has only about 2,500 miles on it, but the door has been out of alignment as long as I've had it. It annoys me. I've taken it in 4 times to get it fixed, and the service manager always gives me the same old story.
No, that sometimes happens. We'll fix it.
That's what you said the last 3 times. Each time you've tied up my car and the door is still out of alignment. Now, I don't think I was being unreasonable. I don't think that service manager cared one way or another whether I was satisfied. And I do feel that if he wants my business, he should make an honest effort to be more helpful, more interested in my problems.
Helpful interest. That's another thing the boss expects. He wants us to be considerate of his interests and conscientious about doing whatever we can to solve his problems. And now, Mrs. George Hurst, a housewife.
A few days ago, my husband left our car at the dealership on his way to work. That afternoon, when I picked it up, I was in a hurry and climbed in without looking. It wasn't until later that I discovered there was some grease on the seat and steering wheel. Did I have a right to be angry? After all, I don't think it's too much to expect that a car be clean when it's returned.
Our boss wants cleanliness, and he has every right to expect it, because we are telling him your Nash gets better care at your Nash dealership. And now our last customer, Mr. Joe Foster.
I'm a factory worker, and frankly, I don't have too much dough. I live pretty much from payday to payday. The other day, I took my car into the dealership at noon and asked them to adjust the brakes. I planned to take a run out to the country after work. They said they'd adjust them by 5 o'clock. Now, when I came after the car, sorry, we won't have your car ready till morning. What? Your linings were down to the rivets. Wasn't any sense in adjusting them the way they were. I thought you'd feel that way about it. Feel that way about it? The way I felt, I was ready to start swinging on somebody. Why couldn't he have called me? That's not expecting too much. Now, if I can't depend on them for a simple job like that, why, I'm just not having any more.
Dependability. The boss wants to be sure we'll do what he asks and do it well. That we'll do it at a reasonable price. That we'll get it done when we say it'll be done. And that if we run into more cost than we figured, we'll consult him before we do anything. Of course, to do that, we've got to ask a few intelligent questions. Find out exactly what he wants, when he wants it, and how much it will cost. And that's it. Just 6 easy points that our boss wants of us in our dealings with him. And he's not demanding or unreasonable. He simply asks that we show him these 6 qualities. First, prompt attention. Let's be quick to answer the phone, quick to greet him when he comes in, quick to find his needs whenever we encounter him. Second, courtesy. Let's be friendly and cordial. Let's say, good morning, thank you, oh, excuse me, and I'll be with you in a minute. All the little things that tell him we value his business. Third, patience. Things that are simple to us may be confusing to him. Let's understand this and listen to his problems. Let's respect his opinions. Fourth, helpful interest. Let's do our best to answer his questions, to solve his problems, to give him the kind of helpful service he wants and expects. Fifth, cleanliness. If we are to maintain his goodwill, it is of the utmost importance that we return his car to him neat and clean. And sixth, dependability. Unless he can count on us to do the things we promise, at the price we promise, in the time we promise, we cannot hope to keep him as a customer. Just 6 points. And though to some of us they may seem small, they are in fact vitally important to us in keeping the boss satisfied with our work. To show what we mean, let's try these incidents again. Let's see how they would have worked out had these 6 points been followed.
Good morning. Is there something I can do for you?
Why, yes. I wonder if I could get my car lubricated.
Certainly, sir. Just a minute. I'll call the service manager.
Good morning, Middleburg Nash. A new car, sir? Just a minute, please. I'll connect you with the salesman.
Jim Grant speaking.
Mr. Grant, my name is Webster. I'm just out of the Army, starting a new business of my own, and I need a new car in the worst way.
Well, Mr. Webster, I can't make you any immediate promises, but I'll be glad to take your name, and I'll do my best to fit you into our delivery schedule. The dealer? Why, yes, he'll be glad to talk to you. Just a minute, please.
Mr. Webster, I sympathize strongly with men in your position, and I want to do everything I can for you. But you must realize that we have quite a few men in exactly your predicament. So, to be fair, we just have to take them in order. However, Mr. Webster,
I'll be very glad to put you on our list and bring you along just as fast as I can.
Well, thank you, sir. I'd appreciate that.
I don't think it's anything serious, but I'd like to have it checked.
What seems to be the trouble, Doctor?
Well, the engine makes a pronounced ticking sound. I believe it's a valve noise.
You may be right, Doctor. That could be valve noise. But from what you say, it might also be your distributor. In any case, we'll check both very carefully and let you know.
Mr. Harris, I'm sorry you've had so much trouble with this, and we appreciate your being so patient. This time, Mr. Harris, I'll personally supervise the alignment of this door, and I assure you it will be corrected. We want to be certain that this matter is adjusted to your complete satisfaction.
My car ready?
It's all set, Mrs. Hurst. Clean and ready to roll.
My, it does look nice.
Mr. Foster, we started to adjust your brakes, but we find the linings are just about gone. They really should be relined to avoid cutting the drums.
Oh, nuts. I suppose I'll have to get that taken care of. Well, thanks for catching it, but I just haven't got the time today. Adjust them as best you can, and I'll bring my car in the first of the week.
It's just as simple as that. This business of pleasing the boss resolves itself into treating him with understanding, consideration, and respect. It means giving him prompt attention, courtesy, patience, helpful interest, cleanliness, and dependability. Those are the qualities you must work for. Those are the qualities which, because they're generally lacking in our business, give you the opportunity to be outstanding. Those are the qualities which, if you apply them, will make you stand head and shoulders above every dealership in town. They will bring you more business from your present customers and from more and more new customers, both now and in the future. Yes, those are the qualities which, more than anything else, will satisfy your boss, and will satisfy him to the extent that he will continue to pay your wages, that he will continue to support your dealership, that he will guarantee you a bright and prosperous future.
About 2/3 of all the cars sold in a normal market are used cars. They outsell new cars by 2 to 1. This is a healthy condition because if it weren't possible to buy a used car, many people could not afford a car at all. Furthermore, large new car volume is possible only because people can trade their used cars. These facts add up to this. For the salesman who knows how to sell them, there's a huge, constant market for used cars that will always be a profitable source of earnings. To sell used cars, just as with new cars, the salesman must take advantage of the favorable conditions available to him. For example, let's look in for a moment on a used car sales meeting being held in a Nash dealership.
And so, fellas, we're well prepared to do a real selling job on used cars. We have cars that are thoroughly reconditioned and can be sold with confidence. This is how we uphold our reputation, and you make and keep friends. We have a well-located lot and a well-balanced stock of cars attractively displayed. And our cars are properly priced to meet any competitor who has merchandise as good as ours. Furthermore, we do a lot of advertising to keep our name before the public and to draw prospects in for you fellas to sell. And remember, boys, don't consider it a reflection on your salesmanship to call on me if you feel you need closing help. That's what I'm here for. Now, we have a 1948 Nash 600, which will be a 30-day car tomorrow. It's priced right, looks right, and runs right. And we're going to sell it today. Say, Jim, do you think you can sell it today?
Well, I'll sure do my best.
Fine. I know you will, and I believe you can do it.
So Jim goes out and re-examines the car he's been challenged to sell today. He knows the prospects buy from salesmen who are helpful, who present the product in terms of the prospect's interests. Therefore, he wants to be sure he knows all about this particular car and is prepared to fit the car to a prospect.
Here comes a prospect now. I wonder if he could be interested in this Nash.
However, Jim doesn't meet the prospect at once, as he would if the prospect were a new car buyer. For when a prospect walks into our new car sales room, we should greet him promptly, because we know he's showing interest in only one make, a new Nash. But on a used car lot, it's different. The open display is an invitation for a prospect to choose from a variety of cars the one which best satisfies his needs. Therefore, it's a good idea to let the prospect see for himself what we have in stock and avoid giving him the impression that we're going to hurry him into a decision. But don't wait too long. As soon as the prospect shows special interest in a particular car or shows signs of wanting someone to wait on him, that's the time for the salesman to go into action, to greet the prospect, and to learn all he can about him. In other words, to qualify him. Now, as you know, qualifying the prospect means securing sufficient information to help you make the sale. Qualifying the prospect involves learning what he wants and does with the car. This information can be brought out in conversation, like this.
Yes, that is a nice Ford, sir. Are you driving a Ford now?
No, I bought a 46 Plymouth last year.
Any special reason for switching from a Plymouth to a Ford?
No, I just thought I'd try one. I traded a 41 Chevy on my Plymouth.
I see. By the way, I'm Jim Brown. May I ask your name, sir?
My name is Thompson.
Well, Mr. Thompson, what do you use your car for mainly?
Well, mostly I just use it to go back and forth to work, except weekends when my wife and children generally ride out to our cottage.
Well, that's fine, Mr. Thompson. Now, let me show you this Ford.
And so the salesman opens and closes doors and does very little talking while the prospect examines the Ford. So far, the salesman has learned these facts. He has qualified the prospect on these points: the prospect's name, what car he is now driving, how often he trades cars. He has no strong preference for make. He is married and uses his car for personal transportation. In other words, because the salesman has learned that the prospect is without strong preference, has an acceptable trade, and uses his car for work and recreation, he knows that Mr. Thompson could be a prospect for the Nash. So the salesman proceeds like this.
That's a nice car, Mr. Thompson, and I believe you'd like it. But let me show you a car I believe was made just for you. Here's a car that will give you everything you want. A 1948 Nash 600 sedan. Its appearance will make you and your family proud to own it. And it has the room you need for taking your family when you drive to the lake on weekends. Furthermore, you'll find this one of the most comfortable cars you ever drove, because the Nash 600 has coil springs on all four wheels. It's economical, too. This car will probably cost you less to operate than any other full-size car. And it'll give you dependable performance. The man who owned this car is a service customer of ours, and we know that the car had the best of care. Besides, this car has just been completely inspected and adjusted in our shop, and it carries our guarantee. Here are some other advantages you'll get on this car that you wouldn't get on any other make. The Nash Weather Eye is recognized as the finest conditioned air system on the market. You adjust it by just setting this control. And here's something else.
And so the salesman gives the prospect a complete selling on the Nash and how it fits his needs. He points out all the advantages that made people buy the car when it was new. But in addition, he stresses the condition of this particular car. He points out things that the used car buyer is interested in, such as the amount of wear left in the tires, the condition of the battery for dependable service, the smooth operation of the motor, and the appearance of the upholstery. From the mileage, the salesman indicates the dependability of the clutch and brakes and explains that the select used car tag is placed on only their quality used cars. Yes, if the used car really suits the prospect's requirements, stick to it and keep selling that car. Don't confuse your prospect by switching from car to car. If the allowance on the prospect's car comes up, postpone talking about it like this.
How much is my car worth?
We won't worry about that, Mr. Thompson. I'm sure we can work out a satisfactory deal.
Don't talk terms or monthly payments until you are satisfied that the prospect is ready to place an order.
What would my monthly payments be on the car?
Well, I'm sure we can arrange a plan that will be entirely satisfactory to you, Mr. Thompson.
And the salesman goes on selling until he is satisfied that a sale can be made if appraisal and financing are agreeable. When he is satisfied that the prospect likes and wants the car, an appraiser is given the keys and license card to examine the prospect's trade-in. The salesman continues to keep the prospect's attention focused on the car he is trying to sell him. And when the appraisal is completed, the appraiser should hand the report to the salesman, who holds it till the time is right for presenting the allowance. The best place for discussing the appraisal is in the office or closing room. The salesman asks the prospect to step inside while he works out the whole deal, for it is in the closing room that financial discussion can be kept confidential. Before revealing the allowance, the salesman says,
"You asked me about monthly payments, Mr. Thompson. How much would be convenient for you?"
When the prospect states a figure, the finance rate chart will reveal how much of the car would have to be financed. This amount, plus the used car allowance, may mean asking for some additional money or financing the car for a longer period. You are now in the closing stage, and a complete discussion of allowance and payments follows. If there are any objections, the salesman reviews the quality and value of the car. He points out the reputation of his dealership and his responsibility as the local representative of Nash, like this.
"We're not only interested in selling you this one car, Mr. Thompson. We'd like to make you a satisfied customer, so you'll buy again and recommend us to your friends. Our whole business in used cars, new cars, parts, and service has been built on a reputation for taking care of our customers."
Of course, there is no sure method for selling every prospect, but a well-organized sales procedure can certainly increase the number of prospects you will close. Just remember 2 points in selling used cars. Qualify the prospect, which means securing sufficient information to help you make the sale, and sell him the car that best fits his wants. Qualifying begins when the prospect first comes in the used car lot. Give him a chance to look around, but don't wait too long. Greet him as soon as he shows signs of being interested in a particular car or of wanting someone to wait on him. Then learn all you can about the prospect so you can help him buy the right car. Learn his name, what car he's now driving, how often he trades, his preference for make, how late a model he wants, and how he uses his car. If the prospect has no trade-in, qualify him as to preference for make, how late a model he wants, how he uses his car, and what he expects to pay for it. After learning these things, select the car that will best fit his requirements. Then, present the car in terms that show the prospect that it meets his needs. Sell the advantages of the car's features, remembering that these will be new to the prospect. Sell the condition of the car you present, stressing the particular things that appeal to used car buyers, such as tires, battery, motor, upholstery, clutch, and brakes. Prospects are interested in knowing that these will not cause trouble and expense. If a trade-in is involved, present the appraisal after selling the car, in the closing room if possible, and sell the good reputation of your dealership that stands in back of the car. Yes, there is a great used car market, so use these tested principles, for they will sell used cars. Capitalize on the used car facilities, the selling aids, and the reputation of your dealership. For if you do these things, you will sell more used cars and increase your earnings.